Well, what's up, you guys? So, next on keeping up with the Middle East, looks like Iran gives Israel an aggressive poke on Facebook, which is their version of whispering sweet nothings, maybe. And when naval Tinder is trending, you know that things are heating up over there. So, go ahead and swipe right for military might. Yep, once again, failing miserably at trying to be funny about all the things that are happening in the world. Yet, this is what we're still trying to do here. So, tonight we're going to cover early warning signs, the canary in the coal mine, and how the hell did we get here? So, pop us in, pour up, and let's dig in.
To me like this. He said, most of the world out there is sheep. They're kind, gentle creatures. They can only hurt one another by accident. He says, then there are wolves. The wolves will feed on the sheep. They're the sociopaths. They're the criminals. He says, and then there are sheepdogs. The sheep are a little leery of the sheepdog. He wanders around, checks the perimeter every night, barks at the moon. He would never turn his teeth on the flock, but he yearns for a righteous battle. And when the wolf comes around, nothing else will do, and the entire flock is sitting there trying to hide behind one lonely sheepdog as he faces down the wolves. We're talking about a creature who is capable of confronting and dealing with combat and sustaining themselves across the long haul. The goal becomes to be a sheepdog, to be a warrior, to be the one that is ready to respond to the threats when the time arises.
All right, you guys. Well, early warning signs. And more importantly, how the hell did we get here, right? These things seem to be repeating in history if you take a look. And that's kind of what I was doing. So, like, kind of going through the old Google and just taking a look around. And I guess the search started off innocently and was like, what would be some potential warning signs that World War III was going to start in general, like with no specifics? What I found might surprise you. Maybe it won't. But let's share the screen and you can kind of take a look for yourself. So I went to this site here called, what is this? ushmm.org. When I clicked the button, it just downloaded this huge PDF document. But early warning signs, and this looks like it's how it relates to United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. So let's just take a look through the first 5 pages here. Early warning signs in the pivotal year before Nazi Germany invaded Poland and launched World War II. Intervention could have saved many lives. Why did so many fail to respond to the warning signs, and what lessons do their actions hold for us today? Early warning signs, territorial expansion. Anschluss, March 11th through 13th. German troops enter Austria, which is incorporated into the German Reich. This is known as Anschluss. German authorities quickly implement anti-Jewish legislation that encourages an atmosphere of hostility towards the Jewish population. This little picture here says the Anschluss accelerated the persecution and violence against Jews in the Reich. As a result, Hilde Kramer's parents living from Germany encouraged her to immigrate from France, where she was in boarding school. Okay, so looks like there was some type of foreign invasion to another country. Yeah, does that ring a bell? Anybody? Let's keep going. Actually, there's a little timeline here. Hungarian anti-Jewish laws. This is 1938. Should have paid more attention during history class in high school. Anyways, early warning signs, discrimination spreads. So I feel like this is the phase that we're in right now. We've already crossed page 1 and page 2. Hungarian anti-Jewish laws, May. Following Germany's example, Hungary adopts comprehensive anti-Jewish laws and measures excluding Jews from many professions. So we're not quite, implementing anti-Jewish laws, but it is interesting that all throughout the world, we have crossed. Let's see, we have crossed. We've made leaps and bounds from Kanye's tweets, where multiple people on the left saying that that's anti-Semitic and that he should be canceled, right, are now promoting the Palestinian terrorism, right? And without trying to overlay too much of my opinion here, I mean, I'm trying to keep an open eye, but it's hard to do that when, you're receiving news, and granted, take news with a drop of salt, right? That they're murdering babies, and the evidence is mounting and mounting. And today I'm driving home hearing that they're talking about how they found babies in a freaking oven. And it's just like, dude, it's not looking good. And for me, the whole Israel, Palestine thing, it goes so far back, and I am not well informed or educated as far as how that whole conflict really integrates with each other. I think I get the basis of it though. But for me, is who's ever decapitating babies is the bad guy. Period. End of story. And granted, they're probably both guilty of some shit. I mean, to be completely honest. So that is what that is. But we have made some massive leaps and bounds from October 7th, where I think people were pretty much getting ready to post, Israeli flags next to their profile pictures on Facebook and wherever the hell else, until they realized that this was not like the Ukraine and Russia conflict. This was quite different. And now there's a dividing line. And all across the world, there are multiple countries with plenty of Muslims that are rising up and protesting in the streets. And you have to ask yourself, it seems to be a little interesting that when you have an open border policy and you are bringing in multiple people into your country that they may not necessarily share your values per se. At the time, you think you're being fair and equitable and helpful, and then we get into a conflict like this, and the country's diplomacy with other countries are one way, and then you have a group of people that are coming in who have different beliefs, and then a conflict kicks off, and you have all these riots in the street, and they make up a large populace of your country. Then you have a huge problem on your hands, because whatever you do publicly, as far as support for the nation that you're tied to as a friend or whatever, you're gonna piss off your populace. And we've seen that in London. I mean, we've seen it all over, but recently the protests over the last weekend in London were pretty much like London has fallen in my mind. So let's go back to that article here. So early warning signs, discrimination spreads. This is where I think we're at as far as history repeating itself. This is how it happened last time. Fourth page here is response from the international community. Evening conference, July 6th through the 15th. This would be in 1938. Intensified persecution in Germany led more Jews to try to emigrate, which required a nation to allow them to enter. In response to an increased refugee demand, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt convened a conference in Evian, France. There, representatives from 32 nations discussed their immigrant policies. Delegate after delegate expressed sympathy for the refugees, but most countries, including the United States, refused to alter their immigration policies to admit more of them. Only the Dominican Republic agreed to accept large numbers of additional refugees. Like I said, I probably should have paid more attention during history class in high school. I wonder why they didn't decide to accept more of them in that time when obviously, we were going to get on board anyways and go halfway around the world and go fight a war with our allies. I mean, doesn't really seem to make any sense. Anyhow, I think that pretty much does it for that article there. Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind, these are early warning signs. That's the whole reason of this video. Looking at history and how it repeats itself and knowing full and well that humans don't do a very good job as far as learning from history. So it would seem. Trying to take a look back and see if there's any common ground, and it seems like there is, man. It sure does seem like there is. And I didn't think this thing was going to play out like this. I had no idea. But I have a couple more pieces of news, recent news, that I wanted to bring up as it relates to the conflict. I think another interesting facet is the biblical aspect of this. I mean, it's on everyone's mind, whether you're a believer or not. So let's shoot over here. Looks like I got my stuff all backwards. Bear with me, folks. Okay, so this is does Bible prophecy predict that there will be a World War III? To go over this pretty quick, there's no doubt that World War will be a part of the future. Christ plainly taught that there will be a war prior to his return, Matthew 24, 4 through 31. Some hold it that he spoke generally of the church age in verses 4 through 14 and spoke of the tribulation period starting at its midpoint in verses 15 through 30. Others believe that Christ spoke of only the 7-year period known as the tribulation in verses 4 through 31. Though verses 4 through 14 do seem to be giving general descriptions, they parallel the description given early in Revelation 6, which records details of concerning the beginning of the tribulation. Matthew 24 says there will be wars and rumors of wars, for nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And in various places, there will be famines and earthquakes. Here, Christ makes it very clear that war will play a significant role in the last 7 years prior to his return. So if the big guy in the sky is coming back and there's a 7-year area of war, and we're starting it right now with wars and rumors of wars, that means the fun stuff is coming up. All the fun of famine and plague and earthquake, which I think are the other 3 horsemen, if I remember correctly. Multiple years of Catholic school have failed my memory as far as scripture goes because I hated it. I hated learning about the Bible and all that stuff. And now really wishing I would have paid more attention. But regardless, the next article I wanted to bring up kind of goes back to, I think it's page 3, where you have like this worldwide discrimination, and it's not really discrimination. I mean, it is, but they're taking sides, right? So recent news in Russia at the airport in, let's pull it up. Let's read this here. Let me find it. Okay, I think I may have lost the article, but we'll just read it off of here. So a mob in Russia, Republic of Dagestan, stormed runways looking for a flight carrying Jewish passengers. The episode highlighted the threat of ethnic strife in Russia. I mean, more than likely you probably already know the story behind this, and if you don't, well, let's bring up the next slide. So, top religions in Russia, it looks like mostly a Christian country, nation. Muslims come in number two there. And obviously, in this section, Dagestan, they found out a flight coming in from Tel Aviv, and they were super pissed off, storming the airport. Like complete unrest happened like that. And it's pretty surmazing to think that that could be a possibility, right? To think that like you could have a whole airport that's, I don't know, things maybe things aren't like here like everywhere else in the world, but our airports are secure AF. And to think that a whole airport could be overrun, its security can be overrun, and a group of people could storm in. I mean, likely, possible, sure, maybe with a group large in size and angry AF. But they took over this whole airport and they were looking for people that were suspected to be Jewish on the flight to do God knows what to them. They did end up finding one individual suspected of being Jewish. And, they had certain doors inside of this airport blocked off. And I'm sure it was security personnel, airport personnel were like, oh crap, shit's hitting the fan, literally as we speak. Um, the mob, of course, thought that they were trying to harbor these people coming in from Tel Aviv. And so they end up finding this guy. They take his phone off of him. They take his passport off of him. They're questioning him. It turns out, quote unquote, that the flight contained no Jewish people and maybe no actual citizens of Israel. And then a secondary article states that there was actually some Jewish people there. Being once the military showed up, the police force showed up, they were ushered off in a private helicopter and taken to a secondary location. So we have that. That is some crazy stuff, man. That's just what's going on in the world right now. And this is happening literally everywhere. So let's go to the next slide here. Anti Semitism surges around the world as Israel and Hamas clash. Washington, as the conflict between Israel and Hamas rages for another day, many Jews around the world face a familiar threat, a surge in anti Semitism. From New York to London, St. Louis to Sydney, Jewish communities are grappling with hate and bigotry that often flare up whenever the Middle East erupts. It's just a sad fact, says it's just a sad fact that whenever conflict arises between Israel and Palestinians, Jews in all parts of the world will suffer some level of hate violence, said Heidi Beirich, co-founder of Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. So, I mean, to think that we would ever actually be here again, World War II wasn't even that far away. That's pretty outstanding to me. And it's hella concerning as an American. Like, here I am, halfway around the world from this conflict, trying to, threat matrix this whole thing out as to how it affects me and my family and what we can do to prepare here. And I think recently Mike Glover said it best. Whatever you're doing to prepare, if you're like the prepper guy or the preparedness dude, if you're really harping on preparedness, then you're more than likely you're probably prepared for World War III. You're stocking food. You're have secondary water sources, filtration methods, self-defense. Obviously, there's a whole wagon wheel of sectors that you are trying to level up to get ready for whatever threat comes your way, right? So World War III being, level 10 on that scale, if you were already doing all the things, good for you, because it means that you are more than likely 10 times more prepared, mentally prepared, emotionally prepared, possibly even physically prepared than most people out there that are just kind of going throughout their lives, blissfully ignorant or disconnected from our ancestors in the past, in the recent past, went through the Great Depression. My grandmother, for instance, kept a freezer and refrigerator full of rotting food because it made her feel safe. That's just the type of lady that she was. And we couldn't convince her to not do it. There was nothing that we could do. She took her money and that's where it went. And that does seem crazy to say it out loud, but it is in fact how that generation grew up. And their crux was, don't think that it can't happen again. And here it is, not the depression per se, although it would seem that that would also precede a world war in my mind. And with inflation being the way it is, that seems to be a probable statistic rather than a possible statistic. So let's keep going. 100,000 joined London march against strikes in Gaza. All right, tens of thousands marched through central London yesterday to demand a ceasefire in Gaza, with many also expressing fury at the UK government's refusal to back one. As Israel ratcheted up its offensive in the coastal strip, 2,200 miles away, around 100,000 people attended the latest demonstration, matching last Saturday's record turnout for a pro-Palestinian march in the UK. One difference seemed to be a palpably more tense mood than the previous marches, reflecting events unfolding in Gaza and a widespread exasperation over the government's approach to the 3-week-old conflict. So, this, like I said, this is happening everywhere, all over the world. These headlines that we're seeing are these major places that are, famous, I guess not famous, but sites that we all know about. London has some context there. So the next article I'm going to go through is this. And I found this to be, when I started this video in the very beginning, as far as the virtue signaling left and the hypocriticism is what I'm seeing as a pattern playing out here. When I brought up Kanye and his remarks on Twitter and how everyone was up in arms, like, oh man, that guy's got to get canceled, cancel all of his contracts. I think he had a huge, it was either like a Nike or Adidas contract, lost a couple million. And that dude is basically done. He's done for. And it was all for the fact that he made anti-Semitic comments on Twitter. And now, like, where are we? So in New York over the weekend, there was a protest. And I actually found this to be quite interesting because it appeared, from at least as far as I could tell, that these were both sides kind of coming together. You had what appeared to be a largely Jewish show up there, calling for a ceasefire. They're all wearing these shirts saying "not in our name." Basically, to me, in my mind, going through and being like, hey, don't go to war, we're Jews too here in New York. Don't go to war in our name. We don't want this. We want peace. Let's come together. And so it seems all fine and dandy, but the way it appeared is just to be a huge virtue signal, that it's like, yeah, we stand with Israel. And what you have to remember, guys, is that these New Yorkers are twice removed from the actual horror that's taking place in Israel. Like, they haven't seen, when you don't live there and it's not, your neighbor or your family members being raped, murdered, and killed, of course, it's super easy when you're halfway around the world to call for peace. Imagine if that was us and that happened here. I don't think that they would share the same sentiment. And I could be completely wrong. But I find it highly hypocritical, and it's virtue signaling all the way that they're calling for peace. And at the same time, I think that echoes possibly America's well, our viewpoint that we were trying to share with the rest of the world is that like we were trying to solidify some peace in the area before Israel was to start their ground invasion. And really, let's be honest, Israel knew that we were sending an aircraft carrier and battle groups and multiple battle groups at that. And therefore, waiting for the United States to show up to have their back, right? They It's not that they don't care about our hostages. It's that they have 230 hostages of their own to worry about. And they were slaughtered, murdered in cold blood. So, you know, priorities. Let's go to the next slide, the very last slide that I have, and then we'll end this thing. Israel agrees to U.S. request to delay invasion of Gaza. So this is what I was just speaking to. I'll read the article. Israel has agreed, and this is actually dated October 25th, has agreed for now to request from the U.S. to delay its expected ground invasion of Gaza so the Pentagon can place air defense in the region to protect U.S. troops, according to U.S. officials and people familiar with Israeli planning. Granted, this is from the Wall Street Journal, and all news means absolutely nothing to me because I don't trust anything. It's all just perspective, and the first casualty of war is always the truth, right? So there was no mention in that article of our hostages. There was also no mention of that war, that the ground invasion was delayed because of weather, which was often talked about on the news when this thing first started out, I remember. So, I mean, everything that you're hearing is some twisted version of the truth. It's either a lie by omission or it's an outright lie altogether. This video, wrapping up now, is early warning signs for the canary in the coal mine, that what we can see for a potential conflict kicking off and possibly dragging us into. I'm going to end things with my final opinion as it states right now, October 30th. I think that it's highly likely that you have multiple battle groups, naval battle groups, and aircraft carriers. Like in a couple of days, I think the second aircraft carrier shows up with its battle group. China has one there, and I think Italy has one as well. All these naval ships are deployed to the area. I heard an article the other day saying that there hasn't been this many ships in that area since World War II, and the number of ships vastly outnumbers that previous number. So to think that nothing is going to happen is optimism. And there's nothing wrong with optimism. But what we do here is we look at the facts as they are. We try to plan for the future through a threat matrix of like what's going to happen, how can it affect us here back home in America, how can we prepare and keep our family safe, because you don't control these things. All you control is what happens around you, right? So be mindful and aware of what's going on. I'm trying to bring this news to you so that you guys can kind of make plans for yourself, make plans for your loved ones, and do whatever the hell you think you need to do, because no one can tell you what to do. Maybe you don't do anything. Maybe in your heart of hearts, you know exactly what you need to do, and go do those things, because time could potentially be limited for assets and resources. Unfortunately, the money only pours in for me once a month at the end of the month. So tomorrow, I can go start integrating my plan for what I think I need to do. Been doing it little bit by little bit every single month, and I'll be continuing to do it as long as I can. But this is Prepperines, and stay blessed, stay safe, keep your head on a swivel out there, because the next threat that comes our way, I think, is from within. So we'll see you guys later.